Yeah, so I would say in the simplest form, I would say you should talk about what it is you did, right? And so there's genre is a way in for people. The developer, the pedigree, latest trends, all of those things, and not to say those things don't matter. Um, but for me, I feel just talking about what it is you did in the game is the simplest way to sort of convey to people the experience. Now, obviously, as with any sort of medium or any kind of story you're telling about what you did, you're going to compress and extend and focus on certain things and highlight things that are important. But for instance, it's like take Grand Theft Auto 4, which was one of the games I was able to write about in the magazine as opposed to online when I was at Newsweek. A lot of it was sort of talking about that early somewhat ordinary experience of an interesting experience, being an immigrant. My parents are from Guyana, South America. I was born and raised in Vancouver. I moved to the United States to go to college in California, and now I live in New York. So there was an aspect of that, even though I'm not an immigrant from Eastern Europe, there's an aspect of that that resonated with me and sort of finding your way in a new world. And it's a great metaphor for Grand Theft Auto because Rockstar knows the world, but when you're presented with it at first, you don't. So you're kind of an immigrant to whatever city. It might be Los Santos. It might be, whatever other city that they've had in the games. But you're an immigrant to it. And so it's a great sort of parallel, and then sort of, learning your way and finding your way around and all those things. And the fact that in that particular game compared to their other games, it took longer to get a gun, right? Depending on how you could go through it fast. It took me about 2 hours. That's probably a bit slower than certain gamers. And so like for me, I felt like not to sort of excuse the aspects of a Grand Theft Auto game that might be considered more disreputable by certain audiences but are core to the experience, but was to simply sort of convey, this is a bit different and sort of talk about it in terms of the experience. And for me, at the time, there were other people who were racing to compare it to, and I was getting pressure from some of my editors. Well, can you compare it to The Godfather? Can you compare it to The Sopranos? All those things. I'm like, it's really not the same thing, and any comparisons along those lines are superficial. So I feel that for anyone who is a critic now writing about games, it's essential to capture the experience. And I feel, compared to when I started, not to even remotely claim that I was the first or among the first, I would just say that now, compared to when I started, there are a lot more people and a lot more interesting critics of games. And I feel like that's something that's a relatively recent phenomenon.